Continuation. I welcome you, dear friends, respected guests, and subscribers of my channel. Thank you all very much for waiting for new episodes and also for being present during the live broadcasts. I'm joined now by blogger Denis Yelisevich. Welcome, Denis.
Hello, Alexander.
Thank you all very much for already liking, subscribing, participating, and of course watching everything that's happening. It looks like it's started, or as they say, it's on. Anyway, it's bumpy. In advance, that's classic diplomacy. Saturday, Zelensky-Trump call. Sunday, Zelensky-Trump call. Announcement that on Friday, Zelensky himself will go. Yermak Sverdenko is already in America. And all this brings up some very intriguing thoughts. Either Yulia Tymoshenko says everything will end soon, just hold on, or Bujansky says the acute phase is over. Other speakers say that everything is ending, and here, when everything is ending, they applaud. Trukhanov. And let's find out how they applaud in our poll today. In the Kirkot broadcast chat shown on the screen, you can ask questions directly. Thanks for leaving your questions in Shelest's private club and the YouTube community. We'll also interact with the chat. Poll, what are your thoughts on Trukhanov's suspension as Odessa mayor? And the options are, Zelensky is awesome. It was about time. The attack on Trukhanov was completely unfair. Glad Lysak will come and bring order. Or did Russian special forces set up the security service of Ukraine in a clever way? So basically each option, well, let's say, has its own demand. So please vote. What do you think about this issue and how do you assess it? After all, you can't view this decision separately from the events we're seeing now, the ones I mentioned, or from the situation we're in. Or can you?
I'll put it this way. The second thing you mentioned doesn't contradict the first at all. I believe that the situation with Trukhanov is actually preparation for the elections. And if there's preparation for the elections, it means there's some information that the general public doesn't know about. I can tell you from my side, I also have information that the first or second week of November will bring political news. Also, I can say for sure that by the end of the year, or early next year at the latest, the fighting will become less intense. I'm not saying that it will be formalized on paper, but in fact, that's how it will happen.
Well, look, a lot of people are speaking in riddles right now, but if we try to look specifically at the situation with Trukhanov, well, it's just some kind of nonsense, honestly. He comes out and says, well, yes, I served as a soldier of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. I could have automatically received this citizenship, but I didn't make it in time. There were literally just weeks between me and that decree of the Russian Federation. In general, it's a very, very intriguing story. Christo Grozev says, what a disaster. When I publish it, what will really be there? They're talking about a woman named Tatiana, whose passport series and number are exactly the same. The numbers match completely, and she traveled abroad. That's why it's biometric, meaning it can be found in the databases. Something's fishy here. But Zelensky says we need to defend Odessa. Why was it fine to have Trukhanov as mayor for 3.5 years of war, and now suddenly we need to defend Odessa?
Well, Odessa is a very lucrative place. It's billions and billions of dollars. It's the only port left. It's grain, and obviously a ton of goods. Besides that, it's politics. But I'm not going to defend Trukhanov. To me, all mayors in Ukraine are the same. It's a kind of place where you come in and give all the tenders to your own people. As we know, huge amounts of money stay at the local level, and that's why Trukhanov, let's say, is definitely not my hero. But why have I never really spoken out against the local authorities, even though I don't like any of them across Ukraine? Because what's happening now is called usurpation of power by Zelensky, in the most literal sense of the word. And when I saw who was appointed, or rather who would be appointed, this Lysak, yes, that's his last name, I started trying to find out something about him, and there is practically no information about him at all. And then, of course, it turned out he's a security service of Ukraine officer. It became known that he's a security service of Ukraine officer. And if the security service of Ukraine comes to local authorities, then I understand that Zelensky has finally gone along with this whole story. What are intelligence officers, whether central or local? Putin in Russia is a clear example. Now, Lysak is coming to us and Zelensky is arranging everything that way. That's why That's why Ukraine is in great danger. Ukraine is in great danger, and that's what I'm worried about, Ukraine. Tomorrow they'll destroy monuments, rename streets, and do something on Street 20. Ganulov, what's his last name, right? And Odessa will stop being Odessa, and Odessa is not a Russian city at all, like many dream of hearing. It's a Ukrainian city. But that doesn't mean you should turn it into what they're trying to turn it into.
Yes, please correct it. See how things are with US.
Artificial
Intelligence, you notice how it tracks eyes and hands? Trukhanov has a chance, let's say, to resist and lead something that can really oppose Zelensky, because right now he looks like it. Of course, he tried to get ahead of things. He recorded a video address with the decision beforehand. In general, can they support not Trukhanov personally? Yes, because he's a specific character who has long wanted to be liked. He took photos with Hanul, and he was always supporting these new trends, actually, those women, let me put it that way, who later came out, popped champagne bottles, and celebrated his loss of citizenship, which might be fake. Now there's an opportunity to latch onto the situation in Odessa and develop in Ukraine as, well, as some kind of movement. Well, of course, that's also a cliched expression. Yes, like a different Ukraine. Yes, I mean, in the sense of another Ukraine within Ukraine.
no chance. Trukhanov is, of course, a resourceful person, but, as they say, the state always has one more bullet. This is exactly the case. I can't do anything against the local special services. Trukhanov is the first, but far from the last. Only Vitaly Klitschko has a real chance to stand firm. Even Lacan is already causing a stir up there, I think. About Vilkul, well, I don't like Vilkul. Yes, I haven't liked Vilkul for a long time either. But as you said, the wars lasted 3.5 years, and now I dislike him even more. It really makes you think. And there's another mayor, for example, Filatov, who at one time sided with Poroshenko, even though he used to be his opponent. And we remember how Poroshenko, with armored vehicles and helicopters, was hunting him down in Dnipro and arresting him. So Filatov successfully sided with Poroshenko, and now he will successfully cooperate with Zelensky. I think this won't affect Filatov either. But all the other mayors of major cities are in danger, because if you've seized power locally, then of course you can have a very serious influence on the election. I'll stress again, the election will happen. Spring, summer, fall 2026.
There's a big range, of course, spring to summer. There's a big range.
But you see how fast time flies. The year felt like it just began, yet it's already October and ending soon, so trust me, the same will happen there.
Yeah, by the way, not even half of autumn has passed. Yeah. If you think about it, that's how it is for now. But Ukraine is facing this whole situation in a rather dangerous position. And now let's try to play an opposition to the local authorities. Well, kind of on Zelensky's side. So Pandora's box is open. These are all people. He just said recently on the occasion of some holiday that on the occupied territories, those are our people. So these are our people on the occupied territories. Well, let's say, yes, on the territories that Russia officially annexed. They have Russian passports. It turns out this is an act of self-immolation. All this pathos, these speeches, it turns out that there are conditions, so-called citizens, and there is official proof that they have Russian passports. It simply, well, cuts off any claims to those territories that are now under Russia's control.
I don't understand anything about this at all, because the fact with the passports is the first thing. Do you remember? I can't recall the last name, but maybe you will. One of the officials there was saying that we would almost be building filtration camps later, well, as they see it after the occupation, or however they imagine it. And we will be sorting people there, and we will be filtering people. I don't know. On the other hand, or rather from a third side, we hear hatred directed at those people. We need to reclaim the territories, but dislike the people there. How do we make sense of this? I have the same questions. But believe me, what is happening personally with Trukhanov is much more important right now, because many people still haven't understood that usurpation of power cannot be allowed. And Zelensky has already started to successfully implement this. And if this really spreads to local authorities, then we're in serious trouble. Then there will be no democracy at all, and it won't even be possible in theory.
But we'll talk about democracy a little later. For now, I want to bring in this particular aspect of confrontation. What am I getting at? To finish my thought, how exactly is Zelensky putting himself at risk? This is a very important point. Look, local authorities have always been a punching bag. Well, just look at the situation with Klitschko. It's identical. It's just that they probably won't find anything there, or maybe they'll also Photoshop a Russian passport for Klitschko. This will be Mora's silence, a Kvartal 95 joke. But nevertheless, he constantly takes it out on mayors, governors, on these local officials. Like, it's not me, I can't protect everything, for example. That's the job of the people on the ground. Plus, there was this hint dropped a couple of weeks ago. Hardly anyone really caught on and understood what Zelensky meant. He demands reports from the field. He's starting to suspect that people on the ground are giving him incorrect information about the strikes and their consequences. It's being systematically removed, especially the energy infrastructure on the left bank right now. And we're seeing the strikes, rolling blackouts, and a very harsh winter. And now, it turns out, this responsibility, for example, for a blackout or the lack of a heating season. God forbid I'm not predicting this. For example, in Odessa, he'll have to handle this issue. You can't make anyone a scapegoat anymore. It's really a trap. If, hypothetically, Russia bombs Odessa now and turns it into the Stone Age locally, Zelensky will have to run away and disgrace himself in front of the whole country, the whole world.
No one there thinks strategically, not even about their own politics. Everyone is just focused on the numbers. Thanks. As I said, Odessa is about impressive numbers. You mentioned Klitschko. And in this context of talking about local authorities, I think the resistance of the local authorities is absolutely ineffective. Why? Why don't they go head on? That's what I call it. Why don't they go head on? Because they know very well that Zelensky's clan is exactly the same. They are the same kind of thieves as the current local authorities, that's all. If this government had an ideology, or if a city was thriving or taking action, they'd defend their positions more aggressively. But Klitschko just sat there, swallowed it, and endured. But when something starts to heat up in one place, Zelensky starts to get active. He'll go to the West, give some interview, take a picture with someone important. That's not it. That's not how it works. Do you think so? Well, I'm saying, what's the point? Basically, it's the same as Zelensky's, just to stay in his position as long as possible. It's just pure dirty politics, pure dirty politics, pure dirty politics, and just a fight for money. All of this disgusts me, and Ukraine deserves better. But to the people, I want to say it's time to start respecting yourselves and, to put it mildly, vote a little differently. And if you keep voting for the same faces who have bankrupted Ukraine at the central and local levels for all these 3,000-something years, then you'll always get the same result.
What do the calls mean? Sending envoys in Zelensky's visit to Trump? The background is catastrophic. We just touched on the surface, of course, but we discussed it. These are blackouts in the country. This is the usurpation of power. Well, look, it's one thing to attack the church, right? But you see how they backed off from the church. The judge didn't show up, supposedly got sick. The first hearing was supposed to be on September 30, where the UOC was involved. And they backed off because some senators raised their heads on their Twitters. On X. Yeah, so even there, they're saying, guys, something's not right here. And they quickly, just like that, backed off. It looks like on the 30th, there will be the first hearing to ban the church. But, okay, the church. And here it's usurpation in the direct political sense of the word. And the atmosphere is very dangerous for these meetings. Honestly, it's all about weapons, tomahawks, and funding. Like how Trump hints. It's so amusing to me when Ukrainian, pro-government, pro-Bankova, pro-office Telegram channels do this. And basically, yes, they just take his irony, his ambiguity out of context and say something. He decided to give everything there now. When Zelensky comes, something will be resolved. Trump was saying something different in another way if you listen to him closely. The translations are now quite accurate, thank you. What are these trips about? How do you see it?
I think we discussed this question with you. In the previous interview, I don't recall tomahawks, but I've said the same thing in recent interviews and won't change my view. I don't believe in Ukraine striking Russia with tomahawks. I just don't believe in the strikes themselves. Other speakers keep messaging my Telegram bot, warning about tomahawks and strikes. We'll see. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I don't see it that way. President Trump has never said he would give tomahawks. But there are various press conferences scheduled there regarding weapons. Also, Zelensky will meet Trump on Friday, speak to the press, and they'll need to comment. I still don't believe in all this, because then the stakes are raised to the maximum level. Then it's do or die. If you strike, of course, American intelligence has more information, but logically, if you hit Russia with tomahawks and otherwise stand by. In the Netherlands, $222 million weather safely prohibited. Just forces you to this last option. Well, maybe they'll manage to smash it. Currently, 20% of the Russian oil industry is destroyed. If it reaches 40%, a collapse may occur. But will this motivate Putin to be, let's say, more flexible in negotiations? I'm not sure about that.
Continuation. Look at what political conditions might come from Trump. Zelensky, it seemed for a moment, might be useful to Trump, because after talking with Zelensky, Trump mentioned the Ukrainian impeachment. Well, in other words, another reason to dig up some dirt and hit his opponents with it. The fierce confrontation in America continues, and things aren't as simple as they appear. And that's why Trump needs, let's say, some stones to throw at them. At the bright images of Kamala Harris, Hunter Biden, and other figures, and even Biden himself, even though he's kind of like a shadow right now, but still.
Well, I want to tell you about that post about impeachment, as he calls it, the Ukrainian impeachment. This concerns not only Biden, Kamala Harris, it also concerns Zelensky and Yermak.
Because
they were also very seriously involved there at that time. You're right. Right now in the United States, everything is getting very serious, involving Obama, Soros, and others. Well, let's watch. Let's watch. Zelensky seems confident, I admit. He acts childish, thinking, now the tomahawks are coming. This is personal with Putin. I'll show you how cool I am and hit back. I still don't see any desire for peace in him, and in my opinion, whether it's with tomahawks or not. Now Putin will be more agreeable, and he'll make the compromises that Trump is pushing him toward. The main issue now is that Putin won't compromise. He views the current demarcation as a compromise. Subtitles. So we'll have to keep watching. We'll have to keep watching all of this. I just know there will still be a problem with Zelensky eventually. Even if Putin becomes more agreeable, Zelensky will still do something in the end. I'm certain. We'll all see it.
To be continued. You're talking about the line of demarcation. Well, that's kind of Trump's position. However, neither side recognizes the current state of affairs, and that's understandable. Russia has one territory in its constitution, Ukraine has another, and they overlap. Well, accordingly, let's put it this way. It seems that further fighting is inevitable on Earth. It's all dead already. This whole idea has died. This idea of exchanging lands. What do you think?
No, it hasn't died. This idea hasn't died. It's just that, you see, it all comes down to something primitive. Russia is told to give up territories, and Zelensky says, I won't give them up. I have always been a supporter, and not just a critic, but someone who came forward with the idea that Trump, and accordingly Putin, should make a completely unexpected, straightforward proposal.
And well,
this will be Zelensky's political death. In fact, it has already happened to him. He just doesn't believe it yet. But it's a good proposal. These territories are part of Donbas, but let's consider the question of returning Donbas to Ukraine with the status of autonomy or federation. That would leave them stunned. And this is the option that is a compromise for absolutely everyone. This is the solution to the problem, as Lavrov and Putin repeatedly say. They claim we must eliminate the war's main causes or it won't end. Well, now the causes are gone. In their opinion, it's an absolutely compromised option, super democratic and moreover beneficial for Ukraine. But of course, Zelensky would then have to voluntarily sacrifice himself, and he's not ready for that. We discussed his statement with you, Axio. Remember, he gave an interview 2 or 3 weeks ago saying, I'm not holding on to power. Now the war is ending, I take my suitcase, I leave elections, everything is democracy. That's a total lie, because all his actions say the opposite. By the way, about that, Christo Grozev also published a post and called Trukhanov's documents fake. And Christo Grozev is someone who, at least in my dream, closely worked with British intelligence. If these people openly speak out against Zelensky and make a mockery of the situation, saying it's an obvious falsification, then it means that Zelensky, just like in the case with National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office will come out at specifically important moments. Let's call it in terms of his handlers, or how should I put it, in terms of the thoughts of those people or organizations that have a lot of influence over him. And that's also a question because there's been a lot of activity regarding Trukhanov.
No, well, it's a disgrace, of course. Let's put it this way. We can't say for sure. The materials will be published later. He announced it with Grozev, even though the New York Times already says it's fake. They've even specifically found this woman, Tatiana, whose passport it is. And if they just printed it for him, photoshopped this story, then it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace for Malyuk and Zelensky, of course. Well, what version is Grozev spreading specifically? You say that the handlers aren't really handlers, but that's his version, that it was the Russians who planted it. So specifically, they did it this way, and the security service of Ukraine guys fell for it. And then someone, just for a promotion, brought this to Zelensky. Malyuk, the hero of Ukraine, got himself into trouble, you know. But how much? This is a subtle, maybe a kind of game by the Russian special services. And why would Russia set up Trukhanov, the security service of Ukraine and Zelensky, like this? Isn't this some kind of multi-step scheme?
And what do you think about this version, that there is a Russian mole within, I don't know, the special services or the president's office who deliberately created this situation knowing it's a fake, to discredit Zelensky, to discredit the special services, and let's say to raise the level of political tension inside Ukraine? That's another version, but the KGB is very good at predicting Zelensky's actions. They know what he will latch on to no matter what, and they might have planted this. And as you said, the consequences could be very unfortunate. I don't know how they will save themselves. Imagine allowing a Russian citizen from an enemy state to become mayor of Odessa. And where was the security service of Ukraine at that stage? They should be checking such important positions somehow. Then the electoral committee, you allowed it. So all of this means the election should be declared invalid. Those who allowed this should be punished and the responsible agencies dismissed. You essentially let the Russians take power. Well, this is some kind of fantasy. This is only possible in Ukraine. I'll tell you something else. Here in America, people are watching all of this. Unfortunately, it's upsetting for me. They treat this like they treat Africa. No matter how much I try to convince them.
Well, yes, really natives. These are some kind of tribes. They attack each other, bite, take coconuts from each other, or some kind of game, some kind of prey. I'll ask a direct question. This is an important question. We have, of course, witnessed Trump's show. Yes, it's like a festival of democracy or diplomacy named after Trump. So, people arrived who came to bow their heads before him, and those who are direct signatories, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, the United States of America, also arrived. And in Sharm el-Sheikh, people are filming videos of Air Force One flying in and landing at the airport. Isn't it also pompous? And if you add some music on TikTok, now the American one, right? If you put some music on TikTok, then it's a real show. He was performing there like some kind of, I don't know. Well, honestly, I think it was his anniversary. He was declaring his love to Milana there and with Macron too. They kind of bit each other there, wrestled a bit with their hands. So that was the atmosphere there. But if we look at the bottom line, look, can there be a settlement model in Gaza, a settlement model in Ukraine? Neighboring countries gathered and signed without the participation of the involved countries. So this is a very interesting question. And if we think in this direction, to gather certain representatives of key countries, well, those important for the Russian side, important for the Ukrainian side, to reach an agreement. In other words, they don't interact directly, but to come together and agree on ending the war and officially concluding this war.
There's a 90% chance it'll happen that way. And since success was achieved, especially thanks to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, this model, so to speak, was tested. It's quite possible it will be used here as well. I really believe in that. It will end with even greater pomp, either from Putin or the situation itself. There will be China, Lukashenko will be there. That's how it will be. On our side, it will be Trump, probably Macron, Scholz, and that whole group, possibly Ursula. This will all be settled somehow. I believe in this. But in my opinion, and based on the information I have, we are still very, very far from signing a final peace. I wouldn't expect it any earlier than the very end of 2026, the last quarter, or even 2027. But something preliminary technical is quite possible at the beginning of next year. Let's tie it here. This is important. In November, martial law is extended again, likely on November 5th, if I'm correct.
No, November 5th is the end date of the current martial law. It will be extended next week. Yes.
They'll extend it earlier, but it ends November 5th. The next one is in February, after looking at December and January. If all goes well after February, we won't need an extension and can prepare for spring elections. Or maybe 1 or 2 more extensions, but no more, because 3 months must be left according to the law. And all of this needs to be taken into account, and all of this is important. You can calculate these timeframes too. Basically, technical agreements, elections, and similar things.
But the political field is now clear. Look, let's take your roadmap as an example. By the way, you see, I don't want to go deep into Gaza, Israel, Hamas, Israel, because look, it's clear there. That is, for Israel, from their point of view, it's a disadvantageous situation because they gave up 2,000 and got 20 in return. The Hamas members, in their excitement, shot those collaborators whom they called collaborators. But what exactly does Hamas have outside control? They survived, so maybe they'll be demilitarized or something else. They kind of exist, but what they have are ruins in that territory. To say Hamas won isn't accurate. You could also say Israel won, or that neither side truly won. Well, that's how it is, although there are opinions on both sides. Let's move away from these things because, for example, Pakistan also fired and Al-Kabul also had those shootouts and so on. Let's still focus on the political field. What, according to your logic, will they be selling to the Ukrainian? Buckwheat, peace. At any cost, war at any cost with a parallel army? In shop class, assembling and building first-person view drones. That we are warriors, and only when we are all strong, no one will attack us anymore. For what? Among whom to choose? Among which ideas? How do you see it?
It's impossible to answer this question right now because we don't know how the war will end, and when we find out how it ends, we can only make predictions from that moment. Because if, to some extent, well, in a global sense, it will be a draw, but on a local level, it will be a victory for the globalists. Let's say, I don't believe in this at all. I'll tell you right away, I give it a 0% chance. But let's suppose they fail to resolve the issue with the Russian language. What is happening now will keep happening. And then that's it. I can confidently put an end to it and realize that there are simply no prospects. If workers get drones, the current horror will continue. I don't believe in that scenario. If the issue with the Russian language is finally resolved, if there is freedom of religion, if there is a return to democratic principles, then there is a chance for politics to emerge. There are streets where people can barely even imagine or picture themselves now. Then there will be real political competition. And basically, the United States has exactly this kind of plan. After that point, options like the telethon, sanctions to bar or silence someone from elections won't work anymore.
People are already joking about it here. Listen, sanctions are actually not that bad. They're still okay. They could print nonsense about you on a kid's printer, strip your citizenship, and say you're done. You just have to leave. Then you have to prove that you don't have any other passport, none at all except the Ukrainian one. Yeah, it's not like you have something else and so on. There really is such a thing. But here you see, that's how it goes. By the way, it's interesting with you. How is it? Let me use this word. It's interesting to talk to you as a visionary. About DAI. Yes, about elections on the phone, elections on a smartphone, which are basically a chance for Zelensky, either for himself or for someone who will be coordinated with him and will give him immunity in every sense of the word. Well, that is a successor, yes, for Zelensky. That gives him an edge and a head start. I was shocked when a Ukrainian woman who left the Lviv region in 2022 used artificial intelligence to bring photos to life. Well, through websites, through all these available, yes, Chinese GPTs, she brought faces to life. They passed face control in DIIA, like turn your head, blink, and so on and so on. And she took out loans in Ukraine for these people, totaling 4 million. Well, I mean, honestly, I was shocked. No, they found her there, basically. They came, arrested her, and she'll be sent back to Ukraine. But if this is how things are happening, then how can there be any trust in any kind of electronic voting? How much will this be allowed and accepted, first of all, by Ukraine's Western sponsors?
That's a very complicated question. If you're asking me right now, I would say I don't know. Elections would be held soon, within 3 months. Still, I'd agree through DIIY, because without that, there would be absolutely no chance. And call it my beliefs, it's a bit of some information. If Zelensky leaves, Western sponsors and partners should first let him run in the elections. But secondly, if he allows himself to commit fraud, he will end up much worse than he would now. Right now, he's just isolated, but I don't know what could happen to him. I mean, we see examples like Bashar al-Assad, who sits in Moscow, somewhere in the Moscow area, or whatever it's called, playing computer games. Of course, not in Moscow. Zelensky would be somewhere else, but in a similar situation, and they'd be afraid that he might be poisoned. That's why I'm waiting for any elections. I know that Zelensky will lose in any election. If he falsifies the results, people won't tolerate it, no matter how patient they are. Why? He simply has no chance of winning. He will sell power and everything else again. But people actually hate him and Yermak.
Well, you see how Zelensky doesn't turn away from Yermak?
Yes.
Well, it's like a thread with a needle, right? I mean, they're inseparable, yes?
Yes, they're at Lanu. Yes, I don't want to say anything, but they're going to drown. So both of them should go too. Let's see who gets pulled down first. That's how it is.
Zelensky today. Among other things, he held a meeting there and listened to a secret report, about which he said nothing. Because, he says, I can't say anything, but this topic was raised. It's supposedly some new role for Belarus, as I understood it. That's how the context of his statement reads, that there are threats to Ukraine, either to Kiev or somewhere along the western borders, logistically, to disrupt logistics or something like that. Look, when Zelensky talks about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, he even criticizes Grossi and the International Atomic Energy Agency. Everyone perfectly understands why, for example, they don't repair the lines that supply electricity so that the plant doesn't end up in a blackout because of the fighting. Russians are there. They consider this plant theirs. Rosatom considers the plant theirs. And so, accordingly, they are on their side of the Dnipro, and in general, they can't move forward and repair anything there. Zelensky treats this as a trump card, saying, without us, it won't work. Accordingly, now, when he started talking about Belarus and the threat of somehow involving Belarus in the war through its territory or just some areas, well, like, the Russians have become more active there. I understand that some kind of provocation is expected. What set of provocations does Zelensky have right now? Because, well, strikes on the energy sector, in Belarus, the Russians just gritted their teeth, meaning no one. I remember how everyone was clutching their hearts last week. You probably also saw Gradilnya, Novovoronezhskaya combined heat and power nuclear power plant, and the Novovoronezhskaya nuclear power plant. This cooling tower and this one have a black mark from a Ukrainian drone. That's it. That's the nuclear doctrine, nothing more. They exaggerated the story there. No, that's all. They downplayed everything, calling it a threat, but the strike didn't even come close to the target. And it just happened by accident. Leave me alone. So, what kind of reserve does he have for these unconventional moves. What can you say about that? And will he be taking such actions during this period before and after the visit to Trump?
Unconventional moves, provocation, as you mentioned. I'm against Zelensky, but I'm not against Ukraine, and especially not against Ukraine in the war, and I'm definitely not going to root for Russia. So there will be unconventional moves. There will be a new operation like, what was it called? The drone made from trucks. I forgot to mention the web. The web, I think, there will be a new web in a different format, and it will definitely happen this year. Thank you. It's just as clear that Russia's goal here in Ukraine is to cause a blackout. And that's what I'm worried about. In the context of escalation, suppose you cut 40% and cause a fuel crisis in Russia. But how will Russia respond? What will happen?
Today, the information is rather unremarkable, but we probably see it as an attempt to undermine Klitschko. Apparently, there are district administrations there. The head came out and said, "We're preparing buses to evacuate Kyiv," and it alarmed everyone. Well, because last night we saw what Kyiv was like. It was kind of dark, really dark. Some large districts like Libitska and others, when you look from the high rises, it's just darkness. Because no, they didn't shoot. It's because the capital still can't recover from the previous shelling. Now people are talking about evacuating Kyiv. They say they're just changing some buses so medics can assist people. Evacuation doesn't mean everyone leaves. It's mainly for rescuing those who need it and bringing in equipment. But the first word carries more weight than the second. Zelensky can, well, stir up the hornet's nest, quickly disappear and move the capital to another city. And just like in the series Madam Secretary, then all the American intelligence agencies will be chasing him through the forests and he'll be this powerful and unbreakable partisan. Is this about something else? Maybe Zelensky isn't referring to that.
No, this is about something completely different. I don't believe in any relocation of the capital. Zelensky has no options left and will follow President Trump's instructions until final peace is reached. There, starting from the ceasefire or something like that, as I already said, he will start acting strangely. And that's just 100% certain. But here, they're ready for that too. Signals need to be sent. Well,
they say complete. Yes, complete. There won't be a total blackout. There won't be a complete one. It'll be partial. It'll happen little by little. And in a way, Ukrainians are being reassured. To me,
I like how he's preparing. I like how he's already getting ready for the blackout. He says, you just have to endure it and get ready. But what does get ready even mean? Honestly, it really annoys me. How do you tell people to prepare? 3.5 years of war, and you say that? What does that mean? Get ready. Leave, like they told us. Remember, they advised us to go somewhere, to the region, somewhere else. Well, that's what it is. You have to look at it from this point of view. Are you going to be under blackout too? Well, Zelensky, no, he won't be. Well, get ready. I think this should cause aggression in society.
Legalization of aggression is a good term. But if you look at the resilience of Ukrainian cities, as it turned out, once again, nothing is protected. There are no shelters. And in fact, no one has protected anything, not even the stations or energy facilities. Funds were supposedly allocated, but they somehow disappeared along with Mustafa Naim. And now, in fact, all the leaders are having to deal with the consequences. What should we do about this corruption in defense, since it keeps going on and on every day?
There's nothing we can do. Mustafa Naim is alive and well. I highlighted his interviews and statements in my recent videos, yet he was saying entirely different things. So what about those defensive structures, the fortifications? Isn't it the same story? It's exactly the same story. And you see, that's all of Ukraine in a nutshell. So for a post on the internet, they open a criminal case against you. The security service of Ukraine bursts in on you. But over there, basically, Anything goes, basically anything goes. Mustafa Nayyem likely has strong protection from globalists and construction organizations. I can't think of another reason they avoid him. But his sister, meanwhile, is publishing a book with a pretentious title. I don't know if you've seen it. So the other brother is pushing for militarism, and well, that's it. Oh, when we discuss this, it's just poor Ukraine. That's all I can say.
If completely, yes. Do the Americans have a post-war plan for Ukraine? Or will they appoint someone responsible, for example, Britain, like they did with Gaza, find someone like Tony Blair, or maybe Boris Johnson by analogy? Yes, and they will be engaged in external governance here. What do you think in general about the external governance of Ukraine? Honestly, looking at the whole political spectacle, today Budanov came out again, well, kind of to remind everyone that he's the head of intelligence, and he said some complete nonsense. Actually, he says we would have already won, reached the 1991 borders and defeated Russia, but Russia was helped by its allies from North Korea. That's it. Turn off the lights, you understand. So, well, it's all clear now. Because of North Korea, Ukraine didn't defeat Russia. Well, it's that simple. From his speech, he was reading from a paper. And because of what was written in his speech, all of this happened. Doesn't it seem that external governance, at least for some period of time, like a mandated territory or some kind of supervised territory, is the best option? Because right now, Ukrainians will elect someone, and then it's just a disaster.
No, I am categorically against external governance. If we're discussing disputed territories, I previously mentioned Brčko district in Bosnia and Herzegovina on your show. They use a similar format there. And Tony Blair shouldn't be compared to Boris Johnson either. These are people of completely different calibers. There will be no external governance, period. Second, Trump will not hand Ukraine over to Britain under any kind of control. The documents weren't signed for that, and such money wasn't invested for that purpose. We can rule out these options right away. As for the Ukrainian, they'll choose someone. And with the kind of electoral laws that exist, we have to ask, can people who aren't from clans or the so-called establishment even run for office? The answer is no, they can't. So if you're given 20 options and they're all wrong, all bad, then you have no chance. That's what I advise people to consider. If you continue to calmly accept unfair electoral laws, when you're not even given a chance, then don't expect a different outcome. And this whole story of it won't affect me, it'll pass, as life shows, that's a very dangerous thing. And in the end, all of you who tolerate this, you'll simply stop being yourselves. You'll lose yourselves. Thank you. That's why now is the best time to consider it. These 5% for the Verkhovna Rada, in order to get in there, you need to get that percentage here and there. What's it called when one person could be elected by district? When a deputy was elected...
Well, that's the imperative mandate.
Yeah.
Mandates? Yes, by district majoritarian system.
Majoritarian system. All of that was kind of abolished too. Over the past 10 years, democracy has declined and everything has shifted in a different direction. And that's where we need to start. And you can't just get a party into parliament, because to get 5%, you need enormous resources. It's a vicious circle here with no outside control. The point is that we need to break this vicious circle and this chain.
If we bring all this down to the societal level, a terrible scandal in Ternopil, a really terrible one, and moreover one that, well, in general, there are plenty of scandals surrounding the TCC all over the country, of course. But I would like to discuss the Ternopil incident with you. So it all started as usual, but they just picked the wrong person. That person had support. We're discussing Zahorodny, the football player and coach. And he, well, yes, was he blocked or something? There were people who could stand up for him. In short, there was a fight between civilians, athletes, and these, well, TCC guys. Quickly, the Ternopil TCC introduces an innovation. Ternopil introduces it. That personally makes me burst out laughing. Ternopil. They say, so in order for the notification to be as proper as possible, we take real combat veterans who have just returned from the front with a cane. They walk around there limping on crutches, in a wheelchair, so that, well, people don't run away. and this notification process becomes more compassionate, well, basically they brought in all these real combat guys into the notification groups. But today this continued. And today some crazy stuff is happening there. Police, some arrests of people in uniform. So a local activist said that it's the 3rd Assault Brigade. They started kidnapping people and stealing cars under this pretext. According to him, the fighters were involved in the work of the Territorial Recruitment Center, but they started, well, do you remember that old joke about how to make money? It was back in the 90s when the traffic police still existed. Here's a zebra tail. Go make money. That's how the 3rd Assault Brigade began earning a living. Recently, they poured fuel on a man and forced him to run naked around the car. They did a lot of bad things, says the activist, and according to him, there are already 8 people detained. Raids are happening and they're arresting the heroes brought in to make the mobilization look compassionate. It seems to me that this is a certain indicator of how deeply this mobilization is screwing into Ukrainian society, like a corkscrew into a cork, and now you can't just twist it out, you have to pull it out.
This doesn't just apply to mobilization in particular. It's about the military mindset in general, which is being so actively promoted and advocated for. I've heard these talks since 2014. The guys will return from the front and fight officials and restore order. No, the guys will return from the front and need to feed themselves and their families. And unfortunately, the vast majority of them will end up doing things they wouldn't want to. There's also the 3rd Assault Brigade episode. I read about it just before going on air. These are just the first signs, Let's see what happens next, and then things will start to happen. Even scarier, because the state itself, by promoting this, has created such a scale, or is still creating it, that in the end it won't be able to handle. Although I know a special department was created in the Security Service of Ukraine to fight these things. But let's see if they can handle it. To be continued.
Well, nowadays, they say, you see, if you post those videos with the TCC, if you do that, then you're just an enemy.
He's a photojournalist. Is that your hint? Yes.
Yes, the one who is, well, close. Look, so that everyone understands this. Yesterday, I showed this photojournalist on my stream. This is, well, flesh of the flesh. How do you say it? He's a courtier. He photographs everything there, like Zelensky's sneeze, Zelensky's lipstick. That is, plus they sometimes send him to the front to photograph the right kind of soldiers, or when Zelensky goes to the front, that's exactly what is needed, that's right on target, so to speak.
Oh, Alexander, we're discussing all this with you, but I'm actually against it. Take Zolkin, for example. He was with Zolkin on that first show, and that's where this poison started. So the cop who killed a person was released according to the law. Savchenko goes along with the regime, with the propaganda, and starts doing what he's doing. Insulting people with opposing views, declaring them enemies. Let me remind you, this is funded by, well, 1.5 billion hryvnias that go to the television marathon. Let's put it this way, at the state's expense. He gathered some scoundrels in the studio and they sit there telling what should be done with citizens, how everyone is bad. It's just propaganda and support for the regime and dictatorship. Every one of them holds a privileged position. Subtitle editor. Shah was already there. Remember Shah, the one who yelled, that idiot. So this face, it turns out, is the face of today's Ukraine, the media face. This is the face of Ukraine. Okay, I can tell you this. Whether someone likes me or you or doesn't like us, this will definitely lead to something very bad and no one will ever seriously work with this. If a trustworthy person says this will lead to success and is the right thing to do, well, that's just impossible. This is scum serving other scum, that's all.
Laughter, I think you've just described the formula of power in Ukraine.
That's the plain truth. Would any normal person work with Petrov or people like Zolkin? Of course not. I'm not referring to anyone good, kind, honest, or normal. No, they wouldn't.
Scum who work together are a different story. It's deeper than it appears and truly reflects the situation on Bankova Street.
That's how I see it. And there's no need to be shy about choosing words here. Well,
we're told that there are smart, competent people on the team, but they just keep quiet and don't really assert themselves there, because the top person there is like that. It's like not that the Tsar is good and the boyars are bad, but the opposite. And there, there are some reasonable voices, even on Bankova.
Well, I've heard different rumors even about myself. I don't want to repeat them. I don't want to put anyone at risk. But yes, I've heard that too. But I judge by the final actions, and I'm not going to accuse anyone. We joked about those few effective managers. I won't blame anyone except Zelensky. It's like with Boris Johnson. I can't stand him, and many others feel the same. Here in America, people know his true value. But Ukraine's President Zelensky made that decision. If you don't want to do it, let Johnson sit here promising anything. I don't even know what else. The 50s, the 35th nuclear weapons. No, stop. We won't do that. If you agreed, it's your fault. Who decides? The presidents of Ukraine? Neither I, you, nor the viewers. He'll be responsible if the idiots he hired. And why does he hire idiots? Because they are loyal. That is, to worship. You know how things work there. Now, with Trump, they present it as a success of problems. A meeting or call happened, and everyone around Sanish kept praising him. Sanish, you're the best. You did it. He thrives on this attention. And with Trump, as we've discussed many times, General Kellogg, it's completely the opposite. But he's on the team, and there's also another person, the closest one, but not on the team. It's just whoever isn't with us is against us. You're the best. It would benefit Zelensky and Ukraine if he listened to a different perspective, even from someone he may not like. And this characterizes a manager and the head of state in general. That's how it is with Zelensky. Here's the result. Zolkin. That's all those Shevchenko or whatever their names are on those shows at the state's expense. That's what's despicable here. At the state's expense.
Well, now the line between state funding and donor, credit, grant, and other types of injections has blurred. I have two tectonic global questions. After that, we'll close the voting and move on to the audience's questions. There are two of them. So question number one is the United States-China situation and the sanctions, which also look quite interesting, right? He says he'll impose sanctions starting November 1st. There was also a statement today. Besant came out and said 500% for buying Russian oil, but there's a nuance. If Europe does the same, well, it's clear that no one is actually going to impose it. But nevertheless, there's tremendous pressure on the markets from these statements. Trump's son got rich there, the youngest one. Yes, he really just got rich off of this. He became a crypto millionaire, even a billionaire. Everyone is shocked by what he knew. Does this mean there will be a signal? He bet on the decline. That's the situation. But the situation with China is very global. In this regard, Besant says that yes, no, there will be a meeting. Yes, no, nobody wants any tariffs or anything else. They will negotiate. Continuation. Will they reach an agreement? This is one tectonic question. Tectonic. And the second one, probably also a very important question for us. Will Europe dip into the piggy bank of 140 or however much? Right now, they have who knows how many billions of Russian funds there to pay Ukraine and provide a reparations loan.
Let's go step by step. So, about Trump Jr. If what you said was proven, you could easily go to jail for insider trading in America. That's the first thing. Second, yes, the situation with China is tense. This is a real trade war, and it will only be finally resolved when the war in Ukraine is settled. Some trade and military decisions will be made together as a package. China supports the war, Russia acts as its proxy, and all this will be handled together. Regarding this money, the Russian assets that are being confiscated, 40 billion from day one, I've been saying, and I'll tell you today, no one will touch this money. Despite all the problems and radical leftists in power in Europe, if you touch the private property of even the worst scoundrel, that will be the absolute end of everything. That's a terrifying Pandora's box they won't dare to open. If they could have done it, they would have done it much earlier. It won't happen. These talks may continue for another 3-6 months, but no one will touch that money. Confiscating interest is one thing, but seizing the principal or the asset itself is impossible.
Yes, friends, let's move on to your questions. First, let's summarize the Trukhanov vote results. Christo Grozev, the insider, is already publishing it, and now the New York Times and others are too. This is an absolute disgrace. Listen, we urgently need to come out and apologize to Trukhanov, say that the intelligence services misled us. We had no idea, but now we figured it out. This is a disgrace, and right now it's a wave, an avalanche of shame. What's most interesting is that, on the one hand, of course, for me and probably for you, well, I won't speak for you, maybe in some way it's satisfying that these people are disgraced, but the problem is that the whole world now sees the country at war as disgraced. Well, like Ukraine, our country, that's what's bitter about it, you know? It's actually the most uncomfortable part, by the way. So, what do you think about Trukhanov's suspension? 4% glad Lysak will come and set things straight. 6% Zelensky is a good guy. It was about time. 6% Russian special services set up the security service of Ukraine nicely. And 4% the attack on Trukhanov was out of line. What do you say?
It was out of line, but I'm not saying this to personally defend Trukhanov. As I said, this is about local authorities versus the central government on usurpation. I'm against the usurpation of power, not supporting Trukhanov, Klitschko, or any specific mayor. That's how it is.
Let's move on to your questions. Let's go YouTube community. People left them in advance temporarily. So, all right. Alexandra Haas, according to what you're saying, does it mean that Trump was just a tourist in the White House from 17 to 21, just admiring the view from the window? United States Agency for International Development was reportedly recruiting Armia Mova Viru independently. And some crafty people secretly slipped things into the Ukrainian constitution without Trump's knowledge, and construction companies were secretly building NATO military bases in Ochakov without the commander-in-chief knowing. It happens to everyone. The president got lost in the Oval Office and missed the most interesting things. Is that it? Or maybe he just stood up, doesn't want an Afghanistan of his own, and is shifting responsibility to Europe, right?
Trump openly said during his election campaign that big lessons were learned after the first term, and that's why the second term started so aggressively. The person completely brainwashed by Russian propaganda is hinting that Trump is finished. Bases in Ochakiv, there's nothing more to discuss. I heard the person's view, but there wasn't a question.
Why is discussing this pointless? Because of the bases in Ochakiv.
Well, that's just the standard playbook. What base in Ochakiv?
Reznikov went live before the war, before the full-scale invasion, telling a touching story about how British ships could enter without the Montreux Doctrine. Why? Because there will be a British NATO training center there, and the bricks are supposedly Ukrainian, so it's not really a NATO base, but a training center. Will it be like that? Or
There was a base?
it will be.
There will be a base.
They built it, and they finished it, and before the full-scale invasion, all the preparations were done there, and there were foreign NATO soldiers there, so they wanted to, it really was their plan to create a NATO base there. They were just covering it up. Well, you know, with something, well, look, that was their logic. We had a Russian military base in Russia, the Black Sea Fleet, right? Well, we were non-aligned, but they wanted to sell it this way. Moreover, Reznikov clearly explained how to bypass this tricky scheme live on air on some channel. There were a lot of them back then. I mean, live on air, I personally heard it.
All right, look, so I'm for neutrality. But this woman is talking about a NATO base getting ready to attack Russia. Is anyone even claiming Russian land? No, but Putin exaggerated this issue for them. I'm for neutrality, I'll say it again. I realized Ukraine doesn't need NATO. During the war, I supported it, but later admitted neutrality is necessary.
Practice shows that not all neutrality is the same. You can add NATO aspirations to the constitution or build bases with Ukrainians, but that's it.
Maybe only for Ukraine. I back Austria's armed neutrality model with NATO cooperation.
So, good afternoon, Vitali. This is Alexander Denis writing. Question. The Venezuelan opposition figure, who dedicated her Nobel Prize to Trump, now pledges to privatize the entire oil industry for United States interests. What do you think? Does Zelensky have enough flexibility to outdo such advances toward Donald Fedorovich? Thank you in advance for your answer.
I can tell you, if I came to power in Ukraine, I would do exactly what she said. This is the only right decision for making money for a wealthy country, and as a guarantee of security from idiots like Maduro or any other dictators, whether financial or military. That's why I didn't get the person's joke. I respect Maria Machado. She's facing insane repression.
I
I support her.
and geostrategic security above all. So let's continue, Dennis. If, according to your version, Ukraine will face radical changes after 2027, why are you so confident that this is more than realistic? With all the risks of the Democrats returning to power in the United States, after all, in that case, Ukraine will no longer be able to be more independent, accepting the new rules of the game set by the Democrats. Everything is tied to money.
I don't consider people. I've always said don't anticipate problems that don't exist yet. We already have enough. If that happens, if the Democrats win, and God willing, I'll be happy to go on air and discuss it. For example, I'm certain they won't win. I'm also sure a Republican will win the 2028 presidential election. I know what choices this person has, but I won't discuss these issues. We'll handle them as they arise.
Wait, don't you see? Well, I won't say anything. Threats, well, let's say the possibility and likelihood that the Democrats will come back through street protests, through demonstrations, through sabotaging Trump and the Republicans' decisions.
No, they'll definitely try, but I don't trust the final result. They currently have the lowest rating in their history. They're the worst scoundrels. A lot is coming out about Obama and the Russian case, now declassified by the FBI. And now all of this will be proven, as I understand it, in court. So they're going to have a lot of problems now.
So the next question, Sergey? Donnie gave Miley 20 billion. How will this affect aid to Ukraine?
It won't affect it in any way. It won't affect it in any way. Moreover, Trump said that I will only cooperate with Argentina if Miley is president. That's absolutely true. And it perfectly confirms what I've always said. With the right president, Ukraine would have a different situation and different relations with the United States. Much more of an alliance, not just a partnership. Give the Mili, not just give the cooperation, very serious, economic, Mili. There is something to offer, among other things.
Do you get the story? Zelensky seems to be giving everything away while trying to make deals with both the British and Americans. Although, of course, the idea about the 20 billion, let me explain, it's actually very interesting. This swap, basically, the United States Treasury buys 20 billion worth of Argentine pesos.
Which is crashing.
To smithereens, because obviously Argentina has a peculiar political and economic situation. Some people evaluate Milei's reforms positively, others think Milei's reforms are even more catastrophic, but 20 billion for the peso is, well, that's serious support. There's no doubt about it. No one says that about the hryvnia. No.
Of course, this is part of the preparation. If Milei wins the parliamentary elections on October 26th, then I think in 2027, or at the end of 2026, the start of dollarization. And dollarization is carried out precisely by introducing a huge amount of money in the form of dollars. Its evolution is completely stalled. This process takes much longer than a month, maybe even more than a year. So it's absolutely normal. And Ukraine needs to carry out dollarization, to abandon the hryvnia, thank you, or euroization, thank you.
Vladimir asks a philosophical question. In a competition between the smart and the cunning, who wins? Does order beat class or vice versa? Thank you.
As a former pro athlete, I know order beats class. As for comparing smart and cunning, I can only say cunning is not a virtue. Thanks. From my view, these are different things. Thanks. Different skills.
So here, your reader caught it. You also posted a big teaser about the first week of November on your Telegram channel. If you can't answer, could you at least give a hint that this is the very fruit of the worsening situation in the country? The show with barking there? Or are you just picking up on the stream of news from deputies who are also claiming that the war will end soon?
I'll find out. Did the deputies publish before or after me? I'm not subscribed to any deputy. So according to my information, this will be a political story. But I'm already presenting this very carefully because, I caught myself thinking about something. People in Ukraine aren't bad, but perhaps due to their lifestyle, they measure political events with stopwatches, rulers, and string. The prediction must happen precisely on that day and time. Look, it's complicated. Trump can't finish Vitka. The world is working, but can't end the war. But people are waiting for it all to happen, expecting an exact prediction. No, it's a complex process and forecasts are conceptual. It's not a prediction, just information. We'll see if it's confirmed.
So, okay. Questions from the live stream chat. Okay. Well, I see all those things like Shelest lost weight or not, didn't lose any weight at all on the scale, and Dennis is blocking everyone in his Telegram channel. Just everyone. Yeah, Dennis, don't trust Shelest, and Shelest don't trust Dennis. So how are the guys talking about it? No, thank you for discussing the guest, me and everyone. That's always good. Let's just try to stay within proper boundaries, and everything will be great. So there was a question about responsibility. It came up here in the discussion about who is responsible for the attacks. And there is a clear record. But it was the Ukrainian Armed Forces artillery that shelled residential buildings in Kyiv. March 2022 in order to accuse Russia. What do you think? Will Zelensky's top officials be tried for this?
And in March 2022, as on February 24th, and for the past 33 years, I was in Kyiv, Ukraine. This person is in Russia, and I won't say what they're spreading that starts with H. I know how it was because I was there, but these stories weren't.
Well, look, I don't want to comment here. I just don't want to comment. Well, if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's your right. Look, I was in Kiev too, but I can't say that I know who launched what, from where, and at what targets. I was in Donbass too. I saw some things, and something there almost killed me as well. And I was there. I just witnessed that moment. Yeah, I mean, personally in Kiev, basically the point I'm trying to make is to say that you know who fired which shell, from where, and where it landed. Because at that time in Kiev, everyone was usually sitting in basements, hiding, collecting water, running into the store that was open for just 2 hours. Back in 2022, when it began, I quickly bought some grains since everything was gone. I mean, everyone remembers those days. So that's the thing. No.
Wait, you need to ask the question why and for what reason. I'm confident because I know the deputy's mood and what was happening inside. There were no instructions, just total chaos. The country fell into disorder and nobody knew what to do. And then suddenly the armed forces of Ukraine strike Kyiv, and what does he achieve by this? He spreads even more panic, making an already catastrophic situation even worse. Donbass is a different story. There you can stage a provocation, and it's a completely different situation altogether. But we're talking about Kyiv, the start of the war, and a truly catastrophic, uncontrollable situation. The Donbass situation was manageable at one point, and provocations are always possible. I still don't rule anything out. I didn't believe it before either, but why Kyiv? Why? Because people need to be told that Ukraine is bombing itself, that Ukraine is bad, and that Russia needs to annex it, to take it over. And then this person will go to Russia. God, what a good life. Finally. Do you understand? What is this called? These people have nothing but mush in their heads.
So the user is asking you a question. Is your interlocutor suggesting to return to the Minsk agreements? What's the point of that? And are you suggesting to return to the Minsk agreements?
I've never said that in my life. I don't understand this question. People should clarify these things. I never said to return to the Minsk agreements. I've always maintained that. Only that each subsequent one, as we can see, is worse than the previous one.
Well, they mention Arestovich here that he was removed from the office because of the same incident, and that he said it was a Ukrainian missile. Well, this is kind of related to our previous conversation. Who was shooting where and who is hitting what? Look, I just remember these conversations, yeah. Remember, at first they were called Shahids. Now everyone is trendy and corrects it to Geran, Geran, Geran 3, Geran 2. But back then they were specifically called Shahids. And there was a heated discussion. I mean, I had it with some military experts. Well, inside Ukraine, it was really going on. The discussion lasted about 3 days, and then everyone was silenced. We need to somehow organize it so that this shahed is shot down over the field, not from a window, with a rifle. Yeah, that grandma with the jar of pickles and all those moments. No, that was also at the beginning. And we really discussed it, debated it, and then said, no, 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 that's it, and closed the topic. So that's the thing here. This is an important discussion. So, should we consider it their fault when a missile is launched or intercepted, the air defense doesn't work, and it lands somewhere, and someone dies? Should we consider that the fault of the armed forces of Ukraine? At the time, Ukrainian authorities stated Russia was shelling and blamed them, saying everyone must endure it.
Is a different question. For example, when their own missile hits air defense or shoots down some object and it lands, causing a fire and casualties. That's one situation. There are many other similar situations, but you can't just say the armed forces of Ukraine is bombing. For example, well, I don't want to start this debate now.
Well, yeah, that's how it is. Especially since we won't go back to Minsk and we won't go back to the 22nd state either. Yeah.
That's not on the agenda.
It's obvious. That's really true. All right, friends. Thank you all very much for joining our stream today. Thank you. All right. And here the viewer who mentioned Minsk explains, like, watch this again today, says Dennis. Minsk was proposed to return Donbas with autonomous status.
I see.
Yes, thank you.
Now I understand. Besides that, there were countless other conditions.
Yes, friends, thank you all very much for joining the stream. Dennis, thank you so much for your time and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be waiting to see, well, as I understand, October 15th, Dennis. In America, it's just beginning. And right now, everyone is waiting for some kind of statement from Trump today. Something fateful. It was announced yesterday. We'll see what happens. Thanks again. Most importantly, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you and best wishes.
Goodbye.